So I actually did a two-part series ranking 100 movies that I watched this year. It was actually 96, but you know, who's counting? And the movies in today's video were also included in that ranking. So if you saw that, you kind of were spoiled a little bit for this video. But I'm gonna really go into it and talk about them a little bit more and just share just the horror movies that were the best and the worst of the year. Today, we're actually gonna be looking at the top 12 and the bottom 9. I know it's not like the best 10 and the worst 10, like nice round numbers. I'm not doing round numbers this year, I guess. You know, we did 96 instead of 100, and today we're doing top 12 and bottom 9. But it was just such a good year for horror that I literally could not come up with a bottom 10. Like, I couldn't just add one just because. And then it was such a good year for horror, so naturally I had a top 12 because I couldn't omit those two movies from the list and not talk about them and include them in the best of the best. I gave out 7 5-stars to horror movies this year. That is definitely my record. Like, that just goes to show either I'm changed and I'm just extra generous, or horror is just getting better and better as the years go on and taken more seriously, and more money is being put into horror movies, and thus we're getting better horror movies in general. A lot of these are also streaming in case you missed them in theaters, and if they're not streaming near you, luckily I'm working with NordVPN on today's video, so you can bypass that and hopefully be able to still stream them no matter where you live. Now, I think NordVPN is an essential tool with how many cyber threats there are out there while using the internet. Things like password attacks, malware, hacking, and NordVPN has a special feature called threat protection that is always running in the background even when you're not connected to a VPN server, so you're going to be protected no matter what device you're using or wherever you are. Also, because NordVPN will protect all of your devices, because you can use it on up to 6 devices with just one account, which is so helpful. So no matter where you are, if you are traveling or taking other devices elsewhere, in a coffee shop, whatever you may be doing, you'll always be protected. But as I mentioned, NordVPN can also help you with streaming the movies in today's video, because they might be available on different streaming sites depending where you're located in the world, and a VPN will block your IP address, so all you have to do is click on the map anywhere that you want to connect to, and then you have access to all of that country's streaming content. So make sure to go to nordvpn.com/possessedbyhorror. I will have a link in the description box down below as well for the exclusive deal, plus 4 bonus months for free with a huge discount. It's completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee as well. I like to start with the worst movies of the year and just get that out of the way. So we're gonna start with the worst, work our way up to the best. So the worst movie that I saw this year was Afraid. And I have talked about this already multiple times. I did a whole dedicated review, so I feel a little silly like talking about it again and again when it's such a bad movie. It does not deserve this attention. This is, of course, about a family who is testing out a new AI device, and it becomes a little bit too helpful. And I don't really know what else to say about that, because it gets so helpful that it becomes dangerous, but then I don't even want to spoil the movie, but maybe I should. I don't know. I'm not going to, but it just, the plot goes to a really stupid place that doesn't make any sense. I think the script was so bad. It was terrible writing, terrible dialogue, a lot of line deliveries, just was not good. Even the actors could not save this movie. There is absolutely nothing redeemable within Afraid. I'm sorry. This is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And with that, I am done talking about it, probably forever, because I'm just ready to put this movie behind us and pretend that I never saw it. I genuinely don't really get mad in movie theaters when I like spend money on a ticket. I don't care. They're not that expensive, so whatever. This one made me so mad. I was like, I'm wasting so much of my time. Like, I would have preferred to not see this and not do a review for it. Next up, we have Imaginary. Slightly better, I guess, than Afraid. This follows a woman who moves back into her childhood home, and her stepdaughter finds her old bear Chauncey, who turns out to be a little bit more than the stuffed animal that she remembers. Another movie with terrible writing, terrible script. The story didn't really make sense. It gets a full star instead of a half star for having a couple cool visuals towards the end, but it's just endless cliches, bad dialogue, especially from the side characters who were there for no purpose other than the cliche that they were put into the story for. Now, this is from the same director that directed Truth or Dare and Fantasy Island, and arguably those have more redeemable qualities, and those are worth watching more than Imaginary. I don't understand this movie. Even looking at it from a beginner standpoint, I don't think it's a good movie. Like, it wasn't executed well. I don't think the horror elements are there at all. And the lines were just bizarre. Like, a lot of the dialogue was bizarre, and I just, again, nothing really redeemable. With a couple exceptions with the visuals in the end, but beyond that, no. The Strangers Chapter 1 is next. I gave this a 1.5. This is a reboot or maybe a prequel. I'm not really sure what it wants to be. I do know it's part 1 in a 3-part trilogy that is going to be coming out. Part 2 and 3 I expect next year. This is about a couple that gets stranded in an old town, and it turns out they aren't welcome there. I'm pretty sure some of the actors accidentally spoiled the whole point of this trilogy, because it's supposed to be like the origins of the strangers and like the 3 people who break into the house. Like, we're supposed to get to know their story, and this... why? The whole point is that we don't know them. Like, that is one of the things that makes the original so scary, is they are, I mean, it's called The Strangers. As soon as we get to know them, they are no longer strangers. So the whole concept of a trilogy, getting to know the strangers, makes no sense to me. But I think they accidentally spoiled what was supposed to be the reveal anyway in parts 2 and 3. I'm not sure about that, but it seems that way. This genuinely has the worst character decisions I've ever seen in any movie, probably. And again, made me mad in the theater. And there's an argument there that at least it was entertaining in a way where you can like laugh at it or hate at it or hate it or like be mad at it. But I think we're past the era of like dumb horror movies with characters that make dumb decisions intentionally, so the viewer has that reaction where you want to yell at the screen. We're past that era of horror. I feel like that's 80s camp, 90s maybe a little bit, slasher stuff, not in a Strangers movie. Honestly, I think 1.5 is a little bit of a generous rating for The Strangers Chapter 1. Can't wait for 2 and 3. I will be watching them and reviewing them, only for you guys. Only for you. Next, we have Night Swim. This follows a family that moves into a house with a swimming pool and discovers that that pool seems to be haunted with some kind of demonic or supernatural entity. I don't think this works as a full-length feature film. It originally started as a short, I believe, here on YouTube, and I like the concept, which is why I gave it 2 stars, but just again, bad writing. This has bad writing, terrible line delivery from the dad specifically, like laughable lines and comedy in places where I don't think it was needed. If it even was intentional, I don't know. I think it's fun in a way. I do think the script is really messy. It's all over the place. Like, I can have some kind of suspension of disbelief, but there were so many technical issues I had with this movie that it just took me out of it completely, and even the concept could not save Night Swim. Next is The Front Room. So this is about a couple that agree to take in the husband's elderly stepmother and care for her, who seems to be a little bit more than they can handle. Also, Belinda is pregnant at the time, which is definitely more than they should have to handle. 2 stars for it being so believable, like the performances making me so uncomfortable. Horror, again, there's an argument where it's meant to disturb you in a way. It's meant to make you uncomfortable, to challenge your limits, and this just pushed me a little bit too far. Like, I felt so uncomfortable. It wasn't even all about the poop, which, as you know, there was a poop montage in this movie. There was just something else about this movie that made me so uncomfortable. I don't know if it was the performances. It's just a nightmare situation where I would rather watch Mother or Inside than watch this movie ever again in my life. Next is Double Blind. Now, this came out early in 2024, so I believe elsewhere in the world it was out last year, and I think it says it's from 2023, so I'm still counting it because I didn't see it until this year, and it wasn't released in the US until February of 2024. So this follows a woman who signs up for a drug trial and realizes the fatal side effect of the drug that if you fall asleep, you die. I actually really love this concept, and I think it's like a simple kind of story. I just did not love the execution of this. This is where we start the movies that are like they're watchable. From the front room back, those are all like unwatchable to me, like completely not worth your time. But from Double Blind, you know, the next couple are worth your time, I think, still. They just necessarily weren't my movies. I personally love a good sleep deprivation story. I went through a lot of severe sleep depression. That too, depression, sleep deprivation in postpartum, that I genuinely, you know, it really gets to me when a story does that, and I can relate, not obviously to this degree of like this movie, but another movie that does that is called Awake. It's on Netflix. It's like an apocalyptic movie, but I just feel like Double Blind had a lot of, again, technical aspects that made it unbelievable, and I'm okay with some things being a little bit unbelievable. I watch a lot of movies where it's like, all right, you gotta like suspension of disbelief and all that jazz. But when it's a movie about sleep deprivation, I want it to feel like it's accurate in that portrayal and in the technicalities when it comes to that, because then I can relate to it a little bit more. And sometimes it just like took me out of the movie a little bit. Next, In a Violent Nature, this follows Johnny, who is woken up by a group of teens in the woods, and we follow him as he goes on a violent rampage. This, of course, is, you know, shot from the killer's perspective, which I really like. I feel like we're getting more movies with that kind of, like Presence coming out early next year, follows the supernatural entity that's haunting the house. I feel like that's a really unique take on horror and gives us a different perspective and different horror elements to kind of rely on. Now, ultimately, it's a fun movie, but it didn't really work for me. I felt like the pacing was really off. Like, it's still worth a watch, but I felt like it was like slow parts. I didn't even mind the slower parts, to be honest. But then the kills were just so over the top and so ridiculous that it just wasn't scary. The violence wasn't great. It wasn't believable. I keep throwing that out there as if they have to be, but I don't know. I just also think the performances weren't great, which I hate saying because it was more of an independent movie, and I feel like there is some room for error when it comes to that with a smaller budget film, but I just have to be honest, like the performances weren't great. I appreciate what they did with the movie. It just didn't necessarily work for me. I'm not going to necessarily want to watch it again. Next is Mind, Body, Spirit. I have a soft spot for this movie because it is a found footage movie. This follows an inspiring yoga teacher or YouTuber who moves into her strange grandmother's home and finds like a hidden room in the walls and embarks on a ritual practice. It is found footage through vlog style, which I really enjoy. I like when it's like a YouTuber situation. There's a couple movies. Missing Couple came out this year as well, and I started that movie and I never finished it. I probably should have included that in DNF, but I want to finish it. That one I'm going to. But I like the YouTuber vlog style of found footage. I think it's modern and it just works. This one has some really eerie visuals. I think the subtleties are really great, especially in found footage. You have to kind of rely on the subtleties, and this did it really, really well. Also, there was one scene that I thought was so cool visually towards the end. I think it overall was lacking a little bit in the story. Like, I wanted a lot more. We don't usually get a ton of story with found footage movies. I just think the low budget nature of this one was pretty apparent, and it just wasn't fantastic. It wasn't executed very well. It wasn't terrible. I found the pacing to be pretty good for a found footage movie, but overall just wasn't a great movie. Lastly, for the worst movies released this year, but I guess you could say that this is the best of the worst movies that came out, is The Exorcism. This, starring Russell Crowe, follows a father who takes a role on a reboot of a famous exorcism movie and begins to unravel. I really wish I liked this more. I wanted to like this more. It was entertaining, but it just felt really, really flat in the character dynamic and the character arcs, in the writing in general, and also the ending was really, really disappointing. Such a letdown. Again, the concept was there. I thought it was really cool, which is, you know, one of the reasons I gave it 2.5 stars. I think the idea of an actor portraying a priest on an exorcism movie set, and then things obviously happen that are real, is really interesting. I think it's a cool idea. The character of his estranged daughter was not likable. I'm sorry. Her whole side story and her lines and everything in this, I wasn't a huge fan of her, and I didn't really care about their dynamic as much. Okay, let's get into the best movies of the year. Like I said, there are 12 in total, which is so many. I just could not narrow it down. I couldn't. And granted, maybe some of these aren't even horror movies. I don't know. That's for you to argue about in the comments. Again, these are ranked in order of how much I liked them. So we'll start at the bottom, I guess, of the best movies, and that is Strange Darling. I couldn't leave this off the list, especially because I feel like it's been really overlooked in general, and I think a lot of people missed out on this in theaters, although I think it was a limited theater release. So I just want to keep promoting it. I want to keep talking about it in many videos as I can, because I want everyone to see this. And I'm gonna say, the less information you know about it, the better it's going to be, but just know it's like a twisted love story gone wrong. It's like semi-romance in the worst way possible. It's so interesting, and I really enjoyed the format of this, even if it is a little bit derivative of other things. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to give anything away. But it's done in a really unique style that I enjoyed in this kind of movie. I think it added a lot of tension. It added a lot of like horror elements and suspense. It just leaves you guessing on like what is going to happen next, and the pacing is incredible. The performances were so believable. Probably some of my favorite performances of the entire year. I think the story and the overall execution of this movie is really original, even if the format might be a little bit inspired by others. Next is Oddity. Again, this is one I couldn't leave off the list. Like, these are the two movies I just couldn't not talk about one more time before we had to move on from them. This follows a woman who uses the occult to find out what happened to her sister who died. This is like my movie of the year, I think. Like, this one feels like it was made for me personally, just my favorite kind of horror. I think the tension in this is so strong. Again, it's like one of those movies where not a lot is really happening on screen, but the tension is so intense that you're just like dying for a break from it, and then it doesn't give you a break. And I felt so uneasy throughout most of it and was just so curious on what was going to be the reveal, and then the reveal is satisfying, although I think it made some people upset. And like I've said before, some of my favorite jump scares of any movie of all time. It's just so good. Next we have Milk and Cereal. This is easily the best found footage movie that was released the entire year. This follows two friends who run a YouTube channel who do pranks on each other when they take the pranks a little bit too far. First of all, it's only an hour long. It's free here on YouTube. You have no excuse to not to watch it, because you're not going to waste much time doing it, even if you don't like it. I think it's important to support like indie creators like Curry Barker and things. So again, anytime I get a chance to talk about something like this, I'm going to. I just really loved how this continuously surprised me throughout the entire hour. The pacing was so good and so intense, and I feel like things just changed direction so many times. So it made for like a really entertaining found footage experience. And if you often find yourself getting bored in found footage movies, I think this would be a really fun one for you. Again, it is that vlogger kind of style, but a lot of it is like static footage where they have set the camera down. So again, it's not going to be a movie that's going to make you nauseous or anything like that. Next we have a French movie called Mads. This follows Romain as he tries a new drug at his dealer's house before he goes to a party, and it causes some strange side effects. Now, this is done in one single take, and originally I had said that you could tell where they had actually cut and it wasn't done in one take, but I think it was actually confirmed it was filmed in one single take, which is incredible, makes it even more impressive. I was really surprised by this movie, actually. I didn't think I would like it that much. I just find it to be so interesting and dynamic throughout the whole thing. Like, it never felt slow to me. You're constantly wondering what is happening at all. Like, what is this drug doing to these people? I like the character switching. I just felt like it was very well paced. Again, it's not going to be like a slower movie. I just feel like it just kept going and going and escalating. And something about it felt very realistic. Like, maybe it was the way it was filmed. It almost felt like found footage in a way, but maybe it's the character switching, the characters themselves, the performances, something felt very real. Like, this felt like a real movie, which made it more disturbing for me as someone who is easily affected by like drugs in movies and like hallucinations and stuff. That's like a big fear. So it was really effective for me. And how they turned this movie into the kind of movie it is and kept it really unique and creative was so good. And I loved that aspect of it. and I'm being vague on purpose. Next we have Smile 2. This follows pop star Sky Riley, and she witnesses a death, and the supernatural entity that caused it begins to haunt her and taunt her. Again, how they made this movie so unique and so entertaining and original was so impressive, because it's a sequel to Smile, and I was so worried they were just gonna do the same thing over again, but they like took it so much more seriously. Sorry, I feel like my brain is just not working today and I don't know how to speak. I like forgot how to talk. Okay. And maybe that's why this movie blew me away, because I didn't have super high expectations, but either way, it was such a good movie. So entertaining. One of the like most entertaining movies of the year. Now, I would have changed a couple things about the ending, which is why I knocked it down a half star and didn't quite give it a full 5 stars. It kind of deserves it, but we're keeping the 4.5 rating here. I think the movie in general is better than the original, but the original has a better ending and overall like scarier elements towards the end. But personally, I don't think even if they did a million more Smile movies, they'd ever be able to top the ending of the original. Now, next is Love Lies Bleeding, and I could have easily kept this off the list because it's technically not described as a horror movie at all, but I'm doubling down and talking about it because I can't, how could I leave this off? I gave it 5 stars. Like, this is the beginning of the 7 5-star movies. Why would I leave it off? Now, this is a love story, but they get entangled in some family stuff that ends up turning violent. So I think it's a really interesting kind of love story. And like, this is my kind of love story. It's gotta have something else going on. Like, yes, the love story is a focus of the movie, but it's not the only focus of the movie. It's not the only thing that's going on. And it may be the basis of the plot, but it's not the entire plot. And I love a bit of violence thrown in there and some drama, you know? Next is The First Omen. This, of course, follows a woman who moves into a convent where she learns of a sinister plan that is about to take place. This is a perfect religious horror, and again, how they managed to make the prequel to The Omen such a good and brilliant movie that honestly should stand alone. I wish it kind of wasn't part of that franchise and it could just stand on its own. I just think the performance of Nell Tiger-Free was incredible, and I just learned today actually that she is in Servant, which is a show by M. Night Shyamalan and has Rupert Grint in it, and that's been a show that I've been wanting to watch for so long, so now I'm really motivated to watch that. I think this is my favorite movie visually of the year. I think it has the best visuals of the year. I feel like every shot was a work of art. The score pairing with the horror elements was incredible. I think it was disturbing. There were different aspects of horror, like different horror elements in general. It wasn't just disturbing. There were some like creepy, eerie moments. It was genuinely terrifying. I just don't have any notes. No notes. Perfect movie. Wouldn't change a thing. Next is Cuckoo. Now, this is a controversial placement. I gave it 5 stars, which apparently I'm in the minority for. I thought people generally liked this movie. Upon seeing the reviews and other ratings, I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. So this follows Gretchen, who moves to the German Alps with her family when she realizes that they're hiding a shocking secret. I gave this 5 stars simply for being the most original horror movie of 2024. I think it was the most unique and well executed as far as like original concept. I think the horror elements were so weird and unlike anything I've really seen in a movie before, and I loved every second of it. Some of the horror elements and strange, bizarre, almost sci-fi elements like blew me away. I was just in awe. And I also think Hunter Schafer was perfectly casted for this movie. And again, no notes. It's just such an entertaining movie. This is a rewatchable movie too. I cannot wait to rewatch this one. Okay, we're on to the final 4 movies that are the best of the entire year. Next up, we have Alien Romulus. This is about a group of young space colonizers who try to steal equipment off of an abandoned ship when they discover a terrifying life form. This is without a doubt the second best Alien movie in the entire franchise, and I will die on that hill. I don't think anything can compare to the original and the psychological thriller aspect of the original, but when it comes to being a horror movie, this is a horror movie with a capital H, unlike other Alien movies in the franchise that are just action movies. And you can debate that in the comments if you want, but that is my opinion. I rewatched Alien Romulus the day it came out on Hulu, so I was so excited to rewatch this movie that I immediately did. Now, I of course know why some people don't like Alien Romulus. Okay, I get it with the AI usage and things, fan service. A lot of people think there's a lot of fan service in this. That's fine. They're very fleeting moments though. Even if you hated those aspects, why would you let that ruin the entire movie when you cannot debate the other elements going on in this are genuinely terrifying and really well done? Like, I would love to have you prove me wrong because, I don't know, I think the other things, the criticisms that people give this are a little bit nitpicky. I think it's action-packed. The pacing was so good. I liked the different horror elements going on. It was disturbing. The reveal in the end, the ending of this movie made the entire movie for me. The beginning and the ending, actually. I loved both of them so much. All right, top 3 movies of the entire year. Next up, we have Red Rooms. Now, this is definitely the most underrated movie of the entire year. This follows a woman who is obsessed with a high-profile serial killer case, and her reality begins to blur with her fantasy. Now, this is a French-Canadian movie. This, like I've said before, is the most exciting slow burn movie I've ever seen in my whole life. Like, if you want a slow burn, but you want to be engrossed in the plot and like hanging on every word that everyone says, watch Red Rooms. Again, not really a horror movie in the traditional sense, but the tension, it will make you not be able to look away. It is more story driven, it's more character driven. We're focused on this eccentric character and like her decisions are just questionable, which I really, really like. And that is opposed to seeing like a lot of things on screen. So the tension really comes from the story. But I think sometimes that's exactly what we want in a movie. Next up is Longlegs. This follows a detective that gets assigned to an unsolved serial killer case when it takes an unexpected turn, and then she discovers a personal connection with the killer. I think this movie speaks for itself. I mean, it had a lot of hype and I think it deserves that hype, but I feel like now that a lot of more people have seen it, the hype is kind of dying down and people are actually coming out and saying they didn't enjoy it as much as maybe the hype led on. I will say this is like the scariest or most disturbing and unsettling movie of the entire year. I think Oddity and Daddy's Head were the scariest, but Longlegs was the scariest in the sense that it was disturbing and like weird, and it made me really uncomfortable in a way that I cannot rewatch that. And I don't think I'll ever be able to unsee Nicolas Cage in this role. Like every time I see him, I'm gonna think about Longlegs, and I can't unhear his singing either. It's haunted me to this day. Finally, the best movie of the entire year, no contest, was The Substance. I mean, obviously. This follows Elizabeth Sparkle, who is fired on her 50th birthday, but is soon offered a substance that turns her into a better, younger version of herself. I think this is a perfect movie that encapsulates the entire spectrum of emotions. You will feel every single emotion if this works for you, if you're the target audience and the right audience for this movie, because I do feel like it is a movie that is not going to work for everybody. But I do love that it attracted the masses and not just horror fans. Like, I wish I could erase my memory and rewatch this movie for the first time again. I can't wait to rewatch it, honestly. I really need to soon. A beautiful visual experience, perfect body horror, like just disgusting to look at, but in a beautiful way. Like, the execution of this was incredible. Like, I, again, don't have any notes. No notes. Nothing I would change about The Substance. Hands down, the best movie of the entire year. There you have the best and the worst movies of 2024. I do recognize Nosferatu has not come out yet, but I wanted to get this video up before the end of the year instead of after. So we'll see where Nosferatu falls. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be seeing it until the 27th, so I don't really have time to include it in this video. Please make sure to leave a comment telling me your best and your worst movies of 2024. And make sure to check out nordvpn.com/PossessedbyHorror if you want some help streaming any of these if they're not available near you. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's not the last of the year. We still have my Nosferatu review coming before the year is over, but then we will be done with 2024. So here's to 2025 and all the horror movies it may bring us. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.